Notre Dame's over-under is set at 9.5. And this was one where you could find all kinds of variety. I found 8.5 in some places. The most common line was 9. So 9.5 I also found. We both felt like that was a more accurate line than 8.5, so we decided to go with 9.5. Um, as a Notre Dame fan here, I'll talk about them a little bit. So they do rank 127th in the country in returning production in a year when most teams have everything back. With the notable exception of most of the top teams in the country. There's not a whole lot of the really elite teams that have a lot back because those teams always lose guys to the NFL. It's everyone else that has things back. So I don't know if that makes the 127th worse or better. They have Jack Cohn, who transferred in from Wisconsin after losing Ian Book, who was the starter the last 3 years. I do think he will be an improvement over Book in the passing game, definitely not in the run game. They lose 4 of their offensive line starters from a year ago, including two second-round picks and another third-round pick, another guy who will be in an NFL camp this year. So that's a pretty big headline right there. They do replace them with a Marshall transfer, Kane Madden, who was a second-team All-American, I believe, this last year. Transfers to Notre Dame, and then Josh Lugg and Zeke Correll both have starting experience on the offensive line. So they do return 4. They have 4 guys starting that have at least starting experience. I don't expect the offensive line to be the strength it was last year. It was a finalist for the Joe Moore Award last year. I don't expect that this year. So they will have to change their offensive system. Tommy Rees has talked recently about spreading it out more to playmakers, and just from he hasn't gotten into a lot of X's and O's, but I don't think they're going to be trying the man ball that they did last year. And that was their strength last year. They had 5 offensive linemen, 5 NFL offensive linemen, and 3 NFL tight ends, and that's what they ran behind. Their 2 most talented wide receivers last year missed most of the year to injury. Kevin Austin and I'm sorry, I forgot his name. Braden Lindsey, the track star from Oregon. And I really like their running back room. They got Kyron Williams and Chris Tyree. Chris Tyree may be the fastest player in the country, which is not something that Notre Dame has had in about 25 years. So it's an interesting team. Their defense is very deep, but other than Kyle Hamilton, doesn't really have any superstars. Kyle Hamilton, of course, probably the best safety in the country. Their schedule's kind of a unique one. They don't actually play a top 5 team this year, but they play 4 top 15 teams. North Carolina, who we are both high on, Wisconsin, Cincinnati, and USC. So 4 teams that most people have in the top 15. Feels like 4 teams that could definitely beat them. The rest of the schedule, I don't know. I feel like Notre Dame would have to fall a lot to lose to anyone else. To me, 8-4 is the floor, but also I do think 12-0 is the ceiling. The line is 9.5. What does that tell you? I don't know. Do you view all those games as toss-ups, or do you have any of those as likely losses? Where do you fall in this line?
So I actually like you guys this year. I have you going 10-2. I think you'll win half of the toss-up games. I think you'll lose to Cincinnati. I'm a Georgia fan who was very impressed with Cincinnati in our last game. One thing I would just point out, the North Carolina game, which I like, I think Notre Dame will beat North Carolina. They have them beating North Carolina. Great game. That's going to be just a phenomenal game. The only thing that worries me is that it follows up the USC game. Like they're just back to back, and that when you have 2 big games 7 days apart, I think it's just really hard to get up for both. So yeah, no, I think that's what gets me. And just one thing, how much would you pay to have Phil Dracovic back in South Bend?
That's a tough question. That's the $1 million question. I like our quarterback room for the future, and there's reports that Jack Cohn is really impressed. Of course, there's always reports like that. Man, I do not know what to think about Jack Cohn. I was never super impressed with him at Wisconsin, but also like in Wisconsin's system, he was asked to, be rookie Tom Brady basically. Like hand the ball off 35 times, make a few timely throws, and that's about all we're going to ask out of you. I think he did have a season where he completed like 70% of his passes. Took him to the Big Ten championship game. They were leading Ohio State for a while. So he's not a bad quarterback. I do feel like he's actually going to be pretty good. Djokovic's ceiling is higher, in my opinion. Um, and you mentioned having tough games back to back. It actually happens twice. They have Wisconsin at Soldier Field on September 25th. A week later is the Cincinnati game at home. Then they play at Virginia Tech. Then they're bye. Then they have USC and then North Carolina. Um, the good news, I guess, is that none of those games are true road games. Wisconsin is neutral. The rest are at home. The senior class in Notre Dame has never lost a home game. There's three good chances for that to end this year. I'm not picking an undefeated season. I do think if those four games are all toss ups, relative toss ups, and I feel good about the rest of their schedule that says 10-2 to me. I wouldn't be shocked by 11-1. I think 11-1 absolutely could happen just because none of these teams I feel like are good bets to beat Notre Dame. Picking all of these games straight up, I might pick Notre Dame all of them straight up. But that's not really how it works. If there's four teams that all have a 49% chance of beating you, most likely two of them are going to beat you. Like that's the way the math works out. So yeah, I think they'll 10-2 is probably the best pick in my opinion, which is the over on this line. If you ask me to pick which two games they'll lose, man, I don't know. Like I go back and forth every day when I think about it. North Carolina probably is one of the scariest to me. You mentioned you think they'll beat them. They pretty much sat on them last year. In the second half, they didn't allow any points to that North Carolina offense, and that was with Kyle Hamilton out due to targeting. Um, so that was confusing, to say the least. Like I don't know. I really like this Notre Dame team as far as just the talent everywhere and everything. Maybe a bit low on the superstar side of things. There's no positions that to me are an extreme weakness. And but again, you need more than that to actually be a national title contender. I don't really view Notre Dame as a national title contender this year, but I do think they're probably in the group of teams 6 to 15, which does feel in the country I'm talking about now. I do feel like they're probably towards the top half of that group.
No, yeah, no, I would feel the same way. And I think the only thing that gives me pause about it is because of the stacked games that we talked about, the back-to-back big games. You have four really big ones, and they happen to come in back-to-back weeks. The really like you guys. I really like you guys' running back room. I love the tight end Mayer, Baby Gronk as he's known. What a stud! Like you have pieces there. The pieces are there. You guys always have what 3 or 4 first round offensive linemen, it seems. But yeah, no, I think you'll beat Wisconsin. I think you'll lose to Cincinnati. I think you'll lose to USC and then come back and beat North Carolina. Out of those 4 games, you have them. I think you have the over as well. What do you have them? Gun to your head, you have them losing what games?
Man, see, I can answer this question now. I might have a completely different answer tomorrow. But okay, you put a gun to my head, so I have to answer these. Okay, let me look at them. Wisconsin, I feel like that's probably a win. Cincinnati, USC, North Carolina. Gun to my head, probably the most likely losses. And this is going to be seen as a slight to whoever I don't say, and that's not how I mean it at all. Probably, man, this is hard. I'm going to say North Carolina and USC, just because we have had a pretty good track record against these teams recently. We beat North Carolina last year. Brian Kelly has a winning record against USC. We haven't lost to them since I believe 2016. But it feels like they've been closer than has been comfortable. And both of these teams have really good returning quarterbacks, Sam Howell and Keaton Slovis. I don't know. I'm not comfortable picking these as losses. If I had to pick two, I think these are my choices. It could also be Wisconsin and Cincinnati, honestly. I could see any two of the 4. I could also see Notre Dame winning all 4. Yeah, it's really debatable to me. You mentioned Michael Mayer. What a stud. True freshman last year. True freshman tight end. Tied for the team lead with 42 catches. It felt like on third down he was money. He would break a tackle almost every time. Just hit him on the short crosser, which is one of the routes that Book was actually fairly comfortable with. I do think I am excited to see the route tree open up a bit, and maybe I should rephrase that. Not necessarily receivers running a bunch of different routes, but the quarterback actually being willing to throw some of the different routes. Um, Book was not very good at reading defenses. Once he got past his second read, it was take off and run, which thankfully he was pretty good at. I do think we are going to see a more potent passing game this year. Tommy Reese, I've been pretty impressed with him. Was not overly impressed with the hire at the time. He's 1 year older than me. I'm 28 years old. He's 29. Extremely young guy, but seems very bright. And it does feel like he is saying all the right things this offseason about, distributing to playmakers and spreading the ball around and being explosive and all of that stuff. Again, that's coach speak. Every coach will tell you those things. Will we actually see it on the field? I don't know. But it is interesting to hear a non Notre Dame fans' opinion on their team. Everyone has an opinion on Notre Dame. You either hate them or love them. It seems like. I'm assuming you probably hate Notre Dame. I don't know that I've ever actually asked you that.
I I don't. I have a lot of respect for him. I would have hated them if Georgia would have lost both legs of the home and home, but we won both legs. So I think you guys are wonderful. And no, I will say I really like you guys' schedule. The schedule that you got that it's not so you're independent, but there's some beauties to it too. You play Stanford, like you play USC, but then you play Wisconsin and North Carolina, Cincinnati, Florida State. You guys are always mixing it up with interesting games. The games are always interesting. I like what you guys do with Navy, and play them yearly. So the yeah no like I don't go either way. I'm lukewarm on the Irish. I do have them winning 10 games this year, and going to a New Year's Six bowl. Um, I think begrudgingly, Coach Kelly has begun to earn my respect. His hire, we've talked about his hire ad nauseum. Um, I, you guys are solidifying your status as a top 10, possibly top 5 program.